You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. This weekend, the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra presents Haydn, Farrenc, and Martinez with Naomi on the podium and at the keyboard. The RBC assistant conductor has joined me for a conversation ahead of the show. Hello, Naomi.
Hi, Simon. So good to see you again.
It's so good to see you too. Now, forgive me, it's been a bit of a weird year, 2020, 2021. This is your first show on the podium, right?
This whole season, absolutely. In fact, it's the first time I've been on the podium in about exactly a year.
Holy moly, how are you feeling about it?
Really nervous and extremely excited.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. But for those who aren't aware, it's not like you haven't been very busy, especially with these online shows. You've been the one calling the cues. I imagine you're really well versed in all the scores and following along. How are you feeling about being on the other side of the camera from being on the production side for the past, few months?
I mean, I'm really excited about it, and I've learned a lot from calling the camera cues. It'll be fun to be on stage while also sort of knowing a little bit about what's going on behind the scenes, which I didn't necessarily always know before.
Yeah, I know. It's that little bit of insider knowledge. So let's get right to the program here. The concert billed as a celebration of women in classical music. Where would you like to start with this program?
Great. Well, let's start with the Martinez. So I suppose that's the centerpiece. That's the concerto, and I will be playing the piano as well as conducting at the same time. This piece is by Martinez, who was a Viennese composer, though of Spanish origin, as her name suggests. She lived in Vienna in the late 18th century. In fact, her family was quite wealthy. They had a very nice apartment on the second floor above members of Prince Esterhazy's family. But up on the third floor, when Martinez was young, lived a very young and very poor Franz Joseph Haydn. So in order to preface this Martinez, we're starting with an extremely early work by Haydn, a piece that was both published as a string quartet, Opus 0, Opus 1, people call it, as well as in this slightly larger format as a divertimento for small orchestra. So that's sort of where we're starting the program, is with Haydn to begin, and then this concerto that I'm conducting from the piano.
Yeah, a little nod to Joseph Haydn. He's a bit of a big deal. I'm sure people have maybe heard his music once or twice. And I'm so excited that you bring up the Marianne von Martinez, though, because, I mean, this is a composer that I'd really never heard of, let alone realizing how small the world was that she happened to live in the same building as Joseph Haydn. Tell us a little bit about her music specifically. I mean, what does it sound like? Can you liken it to another composer?
Well, I think what you really notice when you hear this piece, she was a virtuoso at the keyboard as a harpsichordist, as well as herself a very, very talented singer, in addition to being a composer. She almost certainly would have written this piece for herself to play at the harpsichord. And I think you really, really hear that in the piece. It is so fun to play, as well as very fast. And you can hear her having fun in her living room, probably with musicians in her living room, with who knows who in the audience, with Mozart in the audience, with Haydn in the audience, could be. And just having a great time, having a blast. I think one of the things I really like about playing this music and playing the music surrounding these composers whose names we know so well, like Haydn, so as almost to not even imagine him as a real person anymore. Something I like about this is it helps us really imagine and remember that Haydn was once just a young guy, struggling to pay rent in a cold apartment. I've been there, it makes it more relatable. And likewise, they went to parties. And right now, it's pretty hard to remember what it's like to go to a party, but it's kind of fun to imagine what a party might have been like in the 18th century.
Well, I mean, you can hear the excitement in your voice. How are you feeling about the piano part? I mean, you get to show all sorts of facets of your musicality for this particular concert, and the fact that you get to lead from the keyboard. I mean, A, that's very period of you, but B, it's just got to be a fantastic way to showcase yourself as a musician.
Well, I'm really excited, but in particular, playing a concerto without a separate conductor really relies on the exceptional musicianship of your orchestra. And so, of course, I'm just so delighted to be able to do this with musicians I know so well, who I trust so much and with whom I already have a relationship, because it really makes it like chamber music, which is something we do with friends and something we do for fun. So I'm so excited to be able to do this, especially because I really get to make music with my colleagues in this way.
Very, very special indeed. So the other major composer on the program here is a lady by the name of Louise Farrenc. Now, Marianne von Martinez, I think is, nearly unheard of. Louise Farrenc, most certainly a better name, especially for her long-time tenure working at the Paris Conservatory. Tell us a little bit about this particular work, the Nonet in E flat major.
Well, I think what's nice about this piece and the way it ties into the rest of the program is that this is also a piece of chamber music. It is for 9 instruments, and every single one of those instruments is a soloist in this piece, collaborating with each other. So again, we're really sticking with this chamber music feel and really bringing that right into your very own living rooms, which also fits with this situation that we're all in. This is music for the home. One thing that's really beautiful about this piece as well is that even though it is only for the 9 instruments, it's a group that's with strings as well as winds and horn. And so it has a kind of symphonic sound and a symphonic feel, even though it's for this pared down group. And when I say that all the instruments are soloists, I mean, I really mean it. These are really tricky parts and very virtuosic parts. And a little tidbit that might give you a sense is that the first violin part, in fact, the only violin part, which will be played by our wonderful concertmaster, Gwen Hobig, was originally performed by Joseph Joachim when he was a very young man.
Bit of a big deal, that guy too. So I mean, you can see the circles that Louise Farrenc moved in, right? I mean, she was a big deal back in the day, and as I was saying, a long time tenure at Paris Conservatory, and it was there that she argued for equal pay. She was a real trailblazer, wasn't she?
Absolutely. And the story goes that, in fact, it was this performance, the first performance of her Nonet, that was so successful that compelled her to ask for equal pay. She'd written at this point already several symphonies, but the symphony was not a super popular genre in Paris at the time. It's not easy to get a symphony performed if you don't just have a big orchestra at your disposal, but a Nonet was a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, she's such a fantastic writer, and one of those that is so often overlooked. And, if someone is looking to dig deeper, her symphonies are fantastic. Her third symphony in particular is absolutely stellar.
Oh, incredible. Yeah.
So I'm just so thrilled that her music is on the program. I do really want to close out this conversation by, talking about the future of classical music in particular. And especially for someone like yourself, for someone getting on the podium and getting in front of the orchestra, but also someone who's passionate about programming concerts and just being a musician. Where do you see the future of classical music going? I mean, we're talking about this concert as a nod to women in music, so often underrepresented, for years barred from composition altogether. For you as someone who is now taking to the podium, showcasing this music, what does that mean for you, and what does it mean for the future of classical music?
One of the reasons, as I said, I'm excited about this program is that it reminds us to present composers as people who were at some point in their lives just like us. Of course, quite different from us in many other ways, but it reminds us of the surroundings. And so I think especially presenting historical women composers is a way of contextualizing some of the other music that we know and love, but that we don't often really think of as something that a real person wrote. And sometimes it's really exceptional to imagine a real person wrote Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, right? And I think it's important to remember that, and to remember that in addition to being incredible composers and writers and thinkers, all of these people from the past were also just people. So that's something I find actually really inspiring to remember, and one of the ways in which this program was kind of put together. Well, I think it's also, you talk about how women composers were often excluded, but I think the other thing is that also they were writing. There were women writing music, and of course it took a tremendous amount of privilege and luck to be able to be a composer for anybody, and especially for a woman in the 18th century, in the 19th century. But there are these incredible women composers from the past. So it's exciting to be able to dig up their music and to share it.
That's so great to hear. And I do want to mention, if people are looking for more information, you gave a great interview with Holly Harris in the Winnipeg Free Press. Talk about potentially ghettoizing the idea, but then, just the whole position of music moving forward. So thanks for recounting a little bit of that. And it is so true, isn't it? Just remember that they were people after all, and we so often put them on a pedestal, but they were just human beings like all of us.
I think it's empowering and inspiring.
It really is. It really, really is. And I think we all have that potential in us. And you just do such a great job of bringing that out, especially not only your work with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra, but I have to mention your work with Systema and the empowerment that you give to kids and them moving forward in their careers. Thanks for doing what you do, Naomi.
Oh, thank you, Simon. Thanks for having me on.